You can see that by default it's off, but if I buy the lantern level 1, it gets turned on. Let's play. You can see that everything goes fast, we're invincible, we get the Headstart animation, time slows down, and then the game proceeds normally. Hi, I'm Ricky. Today we're on the 27th episode of the Endless Tunnel series, and in this episode we're gonna see how to make a new type of locked mechanism for your items in the shop and how to make a new Headstart item. This new type of locked mechanism is gonna hold an item from being bought unless the player has bought another item and brought it to a certain level, while the Headstart item, when bought, makes the player go fast for the first few seconds, making him skip the first slower parts of the game. Alright, so let's start. Here I have my sprite I'm gonna use for the item. In the video description you can find a link to download all the sprite assets that I've used in my game. Alright, I'm gonna make a quick new item in here. You already know the drill. I'm also gonna hop in the shop item script and change dummy item 3 to Headstart. And that's it. For now it's simply an image with some text which we can buy to update an integer number. And now we're gonna put the new locked item mechanism in here. And to do that it's really simple. Let's just make and add a new script in here to lock or unlock the item. I'm simply gonna change the interactability of the buy button. So let's make a reference to that. Then we want some type of parameters to know how we decide whether we want to lock or unlock the item. Of course, you can decide to use whatever parameters you wish. In my case, I'm gonna say that the player has to have bought another type of item and has to have a certain amount of level in that item. So I want an item type and an integer. Now let's make a function to change the buy button. And to decide the interactability, let's make a new Boolean function. In here, we're gonna get the item level of this item type and see if it's major or equal than this value. Let's call it in here. And now we just need a way to call this updateability function. We want to call this function in two occasions. Once, it's onEnable. OnEnable is a monobehavior function that's called every time the object is activated in the scene. OnEnable is going to be called, which then calls updateability. But let's say that the item that we have to have a certain level to unlock this item is in the same page of Headstart. In that case, we will have to change page before it refreshes, before it updates. So let's make a new static function that calls all the locked shop items currently in the scene that are active, and then call the updateability on those instances of locked shop item. This way we can call this function from anywhere in our game, and then this function is going to call all the locked shop items that it founds in the scene which are active at that moment, and for each of those it's going to update the availability. Alright, so now we simply need to call this function right here whenever we buy an item. And we buy items in the shop items script. So let's go back here, and in here we have the buy item function. At the end of it, we simply call that instant function we just made. And that's it. Now let's go back to Unity. Let's put the button for the reference. And in my case, I'm gonna say that the item has to be lantern and has to be of level 1 or more. So now if we start the game, you can see that by default it's off, but if I buy the lantern level 1, it gets turned on. And let's say I want to change the requirement from lantern to stronger ores, has to be level 3, then no problem. You can see that now the Headstart is off because we changed the requirement, and level up stronger ores to level 2, it's still off. If I level it up to level 3, it turns on. Perfect. And I'm also gonna buy it. Alright, so that's for the locked item part. Now for the actual Headstart item, it's gonna be a bit more complicated, because Headstart is an effect that influences all the scripts that have to do with speed, time, and acceleration. So we have to inject some code into those scripts. So first thing first, let's go to the game manager, and let's make and add a new component, and I'm gonna call it Headstart. In here we want a value to say how long the Headstart lasts, and another value to say how much to speed up things. we want to call the Headstart effect at the start of our game, so let's make a new public void start script function. Because if you remember, we have a script, the start game manager, where we call all the start script function when the game starts. So let's make a singleton of Headstart. Let's open the start game manager and let's add the Headstart. Great! Now in here we want to activate the Headstart only if the player has actually bought that item, so let's check for the player pref. So here we turn on the Headstart effect, and then after a delay we want to turn it off. We don't need a coroutine to do that, we can just use invoke. So let's make a new private function, and let's call it with invoke. Perfect. Now to actually activate the scripts which use the Headstart effect, because we're going to do so in a very similar manner for all the scripts, I say that the best manner is to make an interface. And because that interface is going to be very small, I say we just make it here dynamically. Of course, it's up to you, you decide. In this interface, we want two void functions, one to activate and one to deactivate the Headstart. And in the activate Headstart function, we also want a parameter taking in the speed multiplier. Perfect, now let's just grab one script I want to inject with the Headstart. So I'm gonna grab the yards manager. We use yards manager to speed up the yards the player is traveling. We have a boolean telling us whether we are accelerating or not, and we have a value that goes from 1 to its maximum value. Let's implement the interface. When we activate the effect, we just tell the script that we already maxed out our velocity, and we set the velocity to its maximum value. But we don't just want to set it to its maximum value, we want to multiply this maximum value with our speed multiplier. We then set it back to its normal maximum value when we end the effect. And that's it. Now back to the Headstart, we just added the yards manager to our two functions. Great, now we just need to repeat this process for all the other scripts. Let's go grab the spawn manager, implement the interface. In this case, instead of speeding up, we have a value called maximum velocity reached. And we actually have two values to change in here. And in this case, anti-speed goes up, so we multiply it with a speed multiplier. But spawn timer is a value that goes down with time, so we divide it with speed multiplier. Then we set them back to their maximum value in end Headstart. And because we use spawn timer max to tell how long the next spawn will take, we also have to change another value, the spawn timer, and set it to be equal to spawn timer max. Basically, we are resetting the value. Great, let's add it to the Headstart script. Now let's do boat movement. In here I simply want the player to not be able to move during the Headstart, so we just change can move to false and then to true. Now let's do boat collision. For boat collision I want to make the player invincible during the effect, so we change the layer to ghost layer. And when we end the Headstart effect, I also want to give a bit of a slow motion effect. I want to show an animation telling you that the effect is ending. And we already have a function that does that, the on lost life without losing. So let's go ahead and call that. The only problem with this function is that it spawns an animation, and that animation is a heart that slowly fades out. And I don't want to show a heart, I want to show the Headstart item, which is a brown arrow. So I'm gonna add a parameter to this function asking for what type of animation you want to show. Change the value here. Then we call this function here on hit enemy. So let's add back the heart here. So that's good. And we also call it in here. All right. And now for us, we have to make a new game object. Great. And now we take it and pass it here. Let's head back to Unity real quick. Let me go to animations, Here we have the Lost Life animation prefab. I'm just gonna duplicate it, open it, change the name, and change the sprite. Alright, now then to our boat collision script. Right here we add the new prefab that we just made. Okay, now back to the script. Let's add the boat collision to Headstart. Great. And now the final script that we need to change is the sprite moving in the background. And if you remember, we use move towards to move the backgrounds. And there's 2 of them, so we can't use the singleton pattern. So in this case, let's cache in the move towards in an array. Now move towards, implement the interface. Here is really simple. We can use speeding up and set the speed to maximum speed. And back to Headstart, let's use the for each function. And I think that's it. Let's go back to Unity. I'm gonna set the effect to last 3 seconds and to be 5 times the normal speed so we can actually see it. And let's also add the backgrounds. And make sure you actually bought the Headstart effect. Let's play. You can see that everything goes fast. We're invincible. We get the Headstart animation. Time slows down. And then the game proceeds normally. And that's it. Alright, I hope you learned something new. If you have any doubts about the core or any suggestion about the next topic, do let me know in the comments. If you like this content and you want more, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.